Thank you very much for having me on this panel. I think I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle because I am probably the youngest person here. I've been in media for 2 or 3 years now. I'm 24 years old. I've been working at the Evening Standard and the Independent, and I've sort of had a look at all the different areas of our coverage, from politics to culture, and I've done a lot of campaigning. I think, unlike Haroon, I think I would describe myself as a campaigning journalist because of our work on food poverty, specifically last year during lockdown. I think for a lot of what I was going to say has already been said, honestly, by much more experienced colleagues. But I think I'll make 2 points. The first one is, when I look around newsrooms, I still don't see enough people that look like me. I don't just mean ethnic minorities, I also mean my age. And there's a big problem because newsrooms aren't hiring as much, which means the average age of a newsroom is going up, which means that people my age, people born after 1990, see less content written by people like them, tailored to their interests and their needs and their lives. A good example of this is the lack of youth participation in elections. I was in travel quarantine for the local elections in London. I couldn't find a single friend who was registered to vote for me. And the number one candidate in London amongst 18 to 30-year-olds is someone you may not have heard of, who's a YouTuber called Nico Omalana. I think that is really, really interesting. And actually, a lot of my friends say to me, Arjun, the only time I ever pick up a newspaper now is when you're in it, which is both a compliment and also very, very sad. So we need to see more young people definitely in newsrooms with their agendas and their content. And the second thing I will say, which leads from that and leads to the fact that youth are very turned off traditional news, is what seems to us to be the hyper partisanship of a lot of news coverage, a lot of political news coverage, and the confrontational nature of it. So I helped to run the Evening Standard's Food for London Now campaign last year, which raised £10 million to help the work of the Felix Project to redistribute food around London. We distributed food for about 21 million meals last year, which really helped people who were in a bad spot because of lockdown. But the issue is that too much traditional coverage of food poverty came from this hyper-partisan angle, where basically the newspapers are divided into those that support the big left-wing party and the others that support the big right-wing party. And the problem with that is that they failed to see the systemic problems that cause food poverty, because one side is saying, oh, it's austerity for the last 10 years, and the other side is saying, oh, it's personal responsibility. And so what that means is that a lot of young people, many of whom find themselves in these situations of deprivation, do not see themselves in that. So I think really our hyper-partisan news media mirrors a political culture that is ultimately quite toxic and confrontational. And I think if you look at countries like Germany, where we have more of a fairer electoral system, which has more diversity of voices, you see that a lot less. That's kind of all I have to say on that.